I love that Jesus taught us so often using parables, stories that illustrated something about the nature of God and the kingdom of heaven, and the nature of people too. When we read or hear a good story, we conjure up images to go with it. We make our own little film in our minds, and that makes it come alive. We make it relatable to ourselves, and it's easier for us to remember. In the parable of the talents, we find a master entrusting 3 of his servants with his wealth while he goes away. A talent was a measurement of weight for gold or silver usually, so he was asking these servants to look after his money. And the master promises to come back, so they know that he will be asking for his talents back and want to know what they did with them. Well, the first and second servants both took on the responsibility and immediately set to work, investing the money wisely so that there would be an increase when the master returned. The third one, however, decided simply to bury it, which would keep it safe with no effort. The master would get back his 1 talent and no more. So what does the parable of the talents mean? Well, the master in this parable represents Jesus, and the servants are Christ followers. Similar to the parable, Jesus has also given responsibility to his followers, us. And similar to the parable, Jesus, like the master, has promised to one day return. Before Jesus ascended into heaven, he said to his disciples, "If I go and prepare a place for you, I will come back and take you to be with me, that you also may be where I am." And that's from John 14, verse 3. This is the reward for wisely using what Jesus gives us and seeing an increase. Just because Jesus is physically absent from the earth at the moment doesn't mean that we are meant to sit back and do nothing. Jesus has entrusted us with his mission while he is physically away. He's entrusted us with spreading the gospel, forgiving those who have wronged us, loving others, caring for his church, being an example to the world, feeding the hungry and thirsty, caring for the poor, the prisoner and the sick, being hospitable to foreigners and outsiders. Jesus has made Christians participants in his ministry, and we're also stewards of the things that he values most. Jesus has entrusted us with his greatest treasures, making us caretakers of his ministry and commissioned ambassadors of his mission. This is an incredible responsibility and one that we should take seriously. A good steward will find ways to grow and improve what's been entrusted to them, rather than just protect what there is. For Christians, this can apply to our time, our money, our body, our abilities, and our skills. When we see these things as a borrowed investment that belongs to God and needing to be returned, we should be motivated to treat those things with care and intention. In the parable, the wise servants knew that their master would return, and they were motivated to grow his investment with the time and money that they were given. Big or small, they made it count and were eager to hand back all that they had earned. So what of the third servant? His response was quite different, wasn't it? He did the bare minimum, buried the talent that he was given, and nothing more than that. He knew he still had a responsibility to take care of it, but something stopped him from putting it to good use. He said it was fear of his master, perhaps seeing him as a cruel taskmaster, not a generous, gracious lord. He didn't take joy in the promise of the master's return, but instead just wasted his time and opportunities and the master's money. He saw no growth and no return as a result. And the master viewed him as lazy and wicked, not even taking the simple action of looking for a little return by placing that talent in the bank to get some interest. I think the servant buried his head in the sand along with his talent. When we think about the responsibility Jesus has chosen to give each of us in his physical absence, it can feel very overwhelming. Fear can be paralysing. What if we get it wrong or make a mistake or we do more harm than good? Some people do expect God to be harsh and wouldn't take much pleasure in serving him. I don't think they've got a very accurate picture of what God is like. Jesus takes a real risk by asking us to take on his mission. There is no guarantee that we will do it well, let alone perfectly. And it's likely that we will make mistakes. God knows all of that. And he still asks us to do it. And that's amazing. His choice to do that is born out of his love for us and his desire for relationship with us. He gives us space for mistakes and space to grow and to learn, and for the joy of working alongside him to spread the good news. It's for our benefit, and if we decide to take up the challenge, it's a big responsibility. There are very real consequences to our response, as there were in the parable. Scripture promises that Jesus will one day return, and when he does, he will ask us, his servants, to give a report of how we spent the time and the opportunities that he gave us. Just imagine for a minute Jesus asking you these questions. Did you care for those you were instructed to protect? Did you provide for those in need? Did you share the good news of my salvation and forgiveness with others? Did you further the kingdom of heaven in your family and your community? Were you a faithful steward of all that I entrusted you with? Those who are faithful with what they're entrusted will be trusted with more. And Jesus said that they are the ones who will enter into their master's joy and share in the glory of his presence. Those who are not faithful in this may face the harsh reality of being called a wicked and lazy servant. And worst of all, they may not share in the joy of their master's presence when he returns. That is something that we really don't want to miss out on. So that in itself is quite an overwhelming thought. But let's look back to the beginning of the parable for some reassurance and encouragement. Here's the beauty in the story. Like the master, Jesus knows us, his servants, well, and our capabilities. He gives to us individually according to our ability. He doesn't ask us to do what he knows we're not able to do. Some are given greater responsibilities than others based on what is possible for them at the time. When we can take on more, he gives us more. The master knew the third servant could only manage one talent, the smallest amount. and he knew that the return would be small, but he still gave. He's not very savvy business-wise, but this is God's kingdom where all are included and given the chance to play a part. This means, proportionally, we're all given the same opportunity. I get the same chance as Billy Graham did. I will never live up to that, and thankfully God does not expect me to. But just like Billy, I start small, make an increase, and then I'm given a little bit more. I work with that, and then God gives me a little bit more. And the same is true for each one of us. We have an advantage over the servants in the parable. Their master left them to it. We have Jesus right beside us, going ahead of us and behind us. He prepares the way for us to do his will, and he follows behind, able to mop up any mistakes. He forgives and he gives second chances. In fact, we never run out of chances with Jesus. He takes great joy in doing the mission with us, and we should too. It definitely isn't all that easy, and it does involve risks, but it is so worth it. So think back to that video clip, that balance beam with Francis Chan. Are you going to walk along it, or are you going to cling on for dear life and yet risk losing it?